A high school student studies until midnight every day. He's moved by his own dedication. His parents tell him he'll definitely get into Harvard University, and he believes that, if he just works hard enough, success is inevitable. A young professional refuses to settle in relationships. She believes that one day, the perfect partner will appear. The one destined just for her. An entrepreneur sketches the first prototype of a product and already imagines the user growth curve shooting upward like a rocket. These are wonderful people. They are sincere, optimistic, and full of heroic spirit. They're the protagonists of their own stories, and the world is more interesting because of people like them. But they're also dreaming. Throughout this series, we've argued that human beings live through narratives. We need stories to give our lives meaning. A little passion, a little imagination, even a little self-romanticizing, is probably healthy. But if your goal is not inspiration but accurate prediction, then your own story is not your best guide. The best guide is what has already happened to people and projects like yours. Today's thinking tool is Reference Class Forecasting, or RCF. Originally developed as a forecasting method, I see it as something even more valuable. A machine that fights narcissism. Whenever you find yourself thinking, I'm different. This time will be different. That's exactly when you should use it. There's already a well-known psychological phenomenon describing the gap between plans and reality. The planning fallacy. Psychologist Roger Buehler asked university students how many days they would need to finish their graduation thesis. On average, they estimated about 34 days. Then he asked them to make their most pessimistic estimate. This time the average became 49 days. Do you know how long they actually took? More than 55 days. That's the planning fallacy. Whenever we make plans, we systematically underestimate time, costs, and risks while overestimating the chances of success. Reality is often worse than even our pessimistic forecast. You might think this only happens to ordinary people. Surely experienced professionals managing billion-dollar projects would estimate more accurately? Not at all. The Danish economist Bent Flibjerg spent decades studying megaprojects. After examining hundreds of transportation projects around the world, he found consistent cost overruns and delays. Rail projects exceeded budgets by about 45% on average. Bridges and tunnels by 34%. Roads by 20%. His famous example is the Sydney Opera House. Originally planned to cost $7 million and finish in 4 years, it ultimately required 14 years and over $100 million. Why are people so consistently wrong? Because the planning fallacy is powered by several psychological illusions working together. Optimism bias tells you, this time it'll work. Confirmation bias encourages you to collect only evidence supporting your hopes. The illusion of control convinces you everything is under your command. Self-serving bias blames previous failures on bad luck, difficult teammates, or unreasonable clients. Survivorship bias fills your mind with success stories while hiding the countless failures. And finally, narrative fallacy ties everything together into an inspiring movie. Problem is simple. You're rehearsing a screenplay. Reality isn't following one. This happens because you're using what psychologists call the inside view. From the inside, all you can see are your effort, your resources, your determination, your strategy. You naturally think, what could possibly go wrong? But there's an old Chinese saying. The person inside the game is confused. The spectator sees clearly. You need the outside view. The outside view, together with reference class forecasting, was first proposed by Daniel Kahneman and later transformed into a practical forecasting method by Bent Flibjerg. The inside view focuses on the unique details of your situation. The outside view ignores your story. Instead, it looks at statistics. To everyone else, you're simply another data point governed by the same laws that govern everyone else. The outside observer asks a different question. What happened to people or projects similar to yours? That's your reference class. How long did they take? How much did they cost? How often did they fail? What does the overall distribution look like? The inside view asks, how will this project go? The outside view asks, how have similar projects usually gone? That's the scientific version of, the spectator sees more clearly. The spectator isn't necessarily smarter than you. They're simply less emotionally attached. They treat you as a sample, not as the hero of the story. Kahneman tells a famous story in Thinking, Fast and Slow. In the 1970s, his team began writing a textbook for high school students. At the first meeting, everyone confidently predicted the book would be finished within 2 years. Then Kahneman asked an educational expert a different question. You've seen many similar teams. How long do projects like this usually take? The answer? Between 7 and 10 years. And about 40% of similar projects were never completed at all. Kahneman was shocked. Still, he thought, we're better than average. His team eventually finished the book. After 8 years. By then, the Ministry of Education had already cancelled the course the textbook was meant to support. Everyone believes they're different. Statistically speaking, almost nobody is. Flibjerg turned reference class forecasting into a simple 3-step process. First, identify a reference class. Not your role model. Not your favorite success story. Find a large group of completed projects genuinely similar to yours. Second, study the distribution. What are the average costs? Typical completion times? Failure rates? Third, compare your own project against those statistics. Only adjust your prediction if you have exceptionally strong evidence that your situation is genuinely different. And that's the hardest step, because almost everyone believes they're exceptional. Flibjerg repeatedly emphasizes, if you insist you're different, the burden of proof is on you. Otherwise, you're simply sneaking your optimism back into the forecast. Interestingly, modern machine learning works in much the same way. Its performance depends largely on 2 things. How large the training dataset is, and how accurately it identifies similar cases. In other words, it industrializes the process of finding good reference classes. Reference class forecasting forces you to switch perspectives. Instead of asking, what story am I living? It asks, what sample do I belong to? Stories explain who you are. Reference classes predict what will probably happen. Few fields demonstrate the power of RCF better than large infrastructure projects. Hong Kong adopted reference class forecasting for public road construction. Officials compared 25 local road projects against more than 800 international projects. Instead of trusting optimistic internal estimates, they asked what similar projects had historically done. The answer? If planners wanted roughly an 80% chance of staying on budget and on schedule, they needed major adjustments from the very beginning. Expected costs needed to increase by about 44%. Expected construction time by roughly 75%. The earliest stage of a project is often when confidence is highest. Ironically, that's exactly when your forecasts deserve the least trust. The most expensive sentence in project management may be, this time we'll control it. Corporate mergers provide another example. CEOs love acquisitions. They talk about synergy, strategic fit, market expansion, and cultural integration. But reference class data tells a different story. On average, acquiring companies don't outperform after mergers. Many actually perform slightly worse. Of course, every CEO has the same response. Other companies failed because they weren't as capable as we are. Every CEO believes they're the exception. Hollywood tells a similar story. Most movies lose money. Only a small percentage generate the majority of total box office revenue. Before, predicting success often felt like guesswork. Today, researchers use machine learning models built on reference classes to estimate whether films will even recover production costs. With remarkably high accuracy. Even cutting-edge technology isn't immune. Take nuclear fusion. Many technology leaders believe commercial fusion power is just around the corner. As someone who once studied fusion research, I'm far more skeptical. Fusion companies have repeatedly postponed their promised timelines. Their milestones keep moving. Since no commercial fusion plant exists yet, researchers use comparable large scientific engineering projects as reference classes. Those comparisons suggest actual costs could easily become 2 or even 3 times larger than initial estimates. Even Elon Musk isn't immune to the planning fallacy. Tesla's full self-driving has been described as coming next year for almost a decade. When SpaceX was founded, Musk believed $100 million would be enough to launch 3 rockets. All 3 failed. The company survived only because it somehow found enough money for a 4th launch. Brilliant people can still be trapped by the inside view. Whenever you think you'll master a new skill in a month, finish moving house in 1 afternoon, or renovate your apartment in 3 months with a fixed budget, pause for a moment. Don't ask only what you hope will happen. Ask what usually happens. How long did your last 3 attempts at learning something new actually last? How often do people run into unexpected problems while moving? How much do renovations in apartments similar to yours usually exceed budget? Treating yourself as a statistical sample may not feel inspiring, but it produces much better plans. It also gives you greater confidence because your expectations are grounded in reality. This applies to salary negotiations too. Many graduates don't know what salary they should ask for. Some ask for too much. Many ask for too little. Your living expenses aren't the right benchmark. Your reference class is. Research people with similar education, skills, and experience in your city. Employers have already studied people like you. You should do the same. Dating offers another example. If your inner narrative says, "Someone as outstanding as me deserves a perfect partner," you'll probably be disappointed by professional matchmaking services. Because they're using reference classes, not fairy tales. Of course, not everyone should end up at the median. Many people truly are unusual in one way or another. But if you choose the right reference class, you'll almost always discover that many others resemble you more than you imagined. Everyone is unique. The real question is, are your talents, resources, and methods unique enough that you belong to a completely different reference class? If the answer is yes, then you still shouldn't trust your personal narrative. You simply belong to another statistical group. Throughout history, countless young scholars traveled to the imperial capital believing they would transform the nation. To them, they were heroes. To the examiners, they were simply another applicant with a certain background, education, personality, and probability of success. The examiners had seen thousands before them. And they already knew how most of those stories usually ended. So here's the lesson. Use your inner narrative to motivate yourself. But when it's time to make predictions, let the outside view pour a bucket of cold water on your dreams. Because hope is useful. Statistics are reliable. That's it for today's content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.